Thanks to Boot.dev for sponsoring this episode. Sometimes I itch and yearn to feel like a true personal computer user, but I don't know how to code. So I'm left to play Typing of the Dead to feel like I'm actually coding something. And as fun as it is, I'm not actually learning anything. I would love to have the ability to program Dark Souls combat into my Minecraft game using JavaScript. Well, what if I told you that was all possible while also having all the fun of playing an RPG and learning and creating? Thanks to Boot.dev, you can now harness the tools needed to learn to code while leveling up like a true wizard. Boot.dev utilizes traditional RPG elements to make learning how to code a true adventure. There's XP, quests, achievements, and leveling up, all while in real life, you are leveling up your knowledge. Boot.dev works around your schedule to help you acquire the ancient knowledge of coding. With a supportive Discord community and a way to see the solution if you're ever truly stuck, Boot.dev is there with you every leg of the journey. If you want to start learning and grinding, head on over to Boot.dev and try some courses for free. Then use code ZachTheBold for 25% off your entire first year. If you choose the annual plan, that is head on over to Boot.dev, try out some courses for free. Then use code ZachTheBold for 25% off your entire first year if you choose the annual plan. And thank you, Boot.dev, for sponsoring this episode. Huzzah! You ever watch a film or TV show and you think, wow, that was really good. I wish I could expand on that world, but you don't want to write fan fiction, so you just repaint it and make it a D&D game? Because that's what I do for every single one of my D&D campaigns. Like, what if BioShock Infinite met up with LA Noire? Like, what if there was Vampire Goonies mixed with Metro 2033? What if... The ideas are endless, and every good DM knows that when you have that feeling, that itch, that creative drive, you can't stop thinking about it. It is debatably the most fun part of the campaign, too. Like, where do I start? Do I write its history? Or maybe I make the mountains and the continents. Maybe I make a pantheon of gods. Well, in my world, the gods are actually this really cool and unique thing where they are the physical embodiment of all the thoughts and feelings of mortals. Your best friend just doesn't care what you're saying, and they're slunched down. They're slunched down, and they're spinning the crank on the play date. You know, that, like, little niche console. Wouldn't be that the worst thing that you're seeing? You're in a huge monologue, and you look over and your friend's doing a slow crank on the play date. You start writing down the details, and you know you shouldn't get obsessed about all the little things, but the niche part is the most fun, and then that's when you just obsess over this campaign the entire time. You can't stop thinking about it. What if I had this or this? You have complete control over the entire world. There's no outsider coming in and changing things. You are its creator, its author. The people do what you want. Conflicts rise and fall because you need them to build its history. You have a perfect image of what this place looks like, a perfect color palette, a theme, a direction, and then you finish it. The world is complete, has a past and a present, it has feuds and bonds formed over time, it even has a pantheon of gods. And you sit there and you stare at this mental image that you've painted across the span of days, weeks, months, and its cities are crowded and the forests are picturesque. It's perfect. And then you feel its emptiness. You know that feeling when you play on a Minecraft server in single player for 2 months and the whole world is waiting and it's like you're the only witness? That feeling of loneliness begins to sink in. The world needs inhabitants. It needs players. You can't be the only one to witness its beauty. So you invite your friends. So you make the group chat, you send out the message, who's interested? A couple of your friends bite. Perfect. You send out another message to them. This is the world. This is what it's about. I need your characters and I need their backstories. And the second you read the first line of anyone's backstory, and yes, they're like Guts from Berserk meets Aragorn, and they're wondering if they can use the Rick and Morty weapons from that expansion, but that's beside the point. The second that you read the first line of someone's backstory, it changes the entire world. Once, when you knew everything, you now step into the unknown. The world that you have prepped and thought about so much has now turned into a game of improv. That you now have to reach into the darkness beyond the walls of your imagination. That house, that was a set dressing, somewhere to just fill a map of the town. Well, someone walked in there, and now you have to fully furnish it, and a family lives there, and they have a dog, and his name is Bork. That's a really funny thought, actually. That a DM is trembling. That they just, like, some player walked into a house. And there's a family. And they have a dog. Oh, God. And you quickly realize that there's more to your world than you quite literally imagined. You've unleashed this invasive species into something you've held sacred, and they find the cracks in the foundations, the plot holes in the history, and how empty the cities are despite being filled with people. You have to adapt to learn with your players, and you can understand that this thing you made, this world, it's alive. And it breathes and grows. That's when you realize with the first touch, the first question, the world begins to spin. And all of a sudden you start caring about the railroad debate. What do I do about my characters or the story, about the world I've created? But it's a shift. You shift your role from the author to the interpreter. You've made the heroes and the villains of the past. But now you're the cold wind in a dungeon. The star that leads the adventurers as they travel during a long night. Your world takes on a new meaning. It's not about making epic mountain ranges or a pantheon of gods anymore. The things that matter most to your players, it's not your history or the maps you drew. It's the goblin they kidnapped or the cool rock they found, the joke that became canon. DMing becomes an acknowledgement of this strange truth. That meaning doesn't derive from what you planned, but now it comes from what your players care about. You build this whole stage, and somehow they find the magic in the dust on the floorboards. You wrote legends, and they write memories. And suddenly, this world that you created isn't yours anymore. It's theirs. And you realize that you didn't create a story at all. You created the space for one to exist. You don't lose power, you gain another. You take what's happened in these last handful of sessions where the first whispers of the villain are heard and the story finally progresses and you meet with your players and you're excited to learn again with them. And then the session gets canceled. Someone gets called into work. Someone has to bring their dog to the vet. Someone has to go to a party. But that's okay, there's always next week. I was actually gonna do this thing where and then someone calls out. Someone can't make the next week either. And then there's something where it's canceled the next week and the next. And there's an effort to try to put things together, but eventually someone gets a new job on Fridays and now we can't do Saturdays either because of someone else's schedule and the game fizzles. There are stories untold. The villain to forever wait in their lair, notes on the back of a character sheet that'll be lost in a folder somewhere. And then there's you, the person that made all of this, that made the world, the epic mountain ranges, the pantheons of gods, that will now all fade to memory. And so you become the only one that remembers, the only one that knows what happens next, the only one that knows the truth and the secrets. And just like that, you're back at the beginning, in a world that doesn't spin, a gallery of work that only you can visit. You start to mourn the things that never happened, the arcs that never finished, the stories that faded before their time. Life got in their way. I'm running a D&D campaign. Turns into, I used to run a D&D campaign that turned into, I used to play D&D. But every so often, a memory would drift back. Roll, a moment, a joke. And you'd catch yourself smiling. That was a good D&D campaign. So what now? All right, cool. The game didn't work out, whatever. The story's left untold, but does that really mean the world has to stay still? I mean, who's to say you won't revisit it with some friends or strangers in the future and see what the reality could change into? But in the meantime, you want to scratch that itch. So you start reading the forums, you start listening to the podcasts and the actual plays, and you make this realization. All of these campaigns are left without a conclusion. These endings, the stories without a climax, it's a part of the game in its essence. And usually the DM isn't the one to end the campaign. They're the one who got everyone together in the first place. And trying to keep a party around, whether you're in high school or your mid-30s, is hard. Life gets in the way. So you're supposed to DM feeling the sword of Damocles over your head that this week could be the last? No. So start over. Open a notebook. New mountains, new city, new world. Go watch a movie, read a book, get inspired. Ask your friends if they want to play D&D. Head out to your local game store. If your friends don't want to play D&D, ask if they have friends that do. You were an author once and then an interpreter, and now it's time to be a creator again, to begin the cycle anew. There is always another story to tell, 1,000 little worlds waiting for you to breathe life into them. Maybe it's a one-shot. Maybe it's a one-shot that turns into a campaign. Maybe it's notes in a journal or the scribbly map that no one will ever see, but you can always start again. You can always make another world and wait for the right people to step inside. So you'll remember that campaign and hold those memories close to your your heart with warmth or embarrassment or even dread, depending on how that last session went. But that's not the point. The point isn't to look at these memories behind glass like they're antiques in a museum. The point is to remember why you made them, that you played together, that you connected, that you created something worth missing. Maybe you will return to the same world, built upon the echoes of the last party. You'll come across their legends or their ruins, or maybe you start somewhere else entirely. It doesn't matter. You're still telling a story. You're not rebuilding from the ashes or starting somewhere new. You're participating in the cycle. That's what D&D is: to create, to release, and then return. It's ending one story and starting another. That is the game for the DM. That is the cyclical tragedy of the creator, the author, the interpreter, to make these worlds, to see them rise, to see them fall, to see them abandoned. And people will leave and be like, well, I DM'd once, instead of just trying it again. As a dungeon master, you think your objective is to create and lead, to make a world, its story, and its history. But as time goes on, you figure out that the real goal is to guide and narrate, not control. And after your 10th campaign fizzles out, you finally start to understand your purpose is to let go, to create something you find beautiful and release it, to repeat the cycle again and again, because that is part of the game. That's how this game is played. You trust your players to breathe life into your world, and eventually, more often than not, you get the abrupt ending. You get the story without a climax. You get the arc that never concludes. But that's what being a DM teaches you: that life changes, that people move away, that stories stop mid-sentence. And yet, those moments mattered. That's why we make them. Thanks for watching.